it's impacting our work and the families that we serve. And so we wanted to come together and get a sense of what's happening, but also hear from you about what's going on in the communities. And also, you know, because of this coalition, you all have been working so hard to stay together, to stay connected, and to share. We're all sharing resources to the best of our ability. So you might want to go to the next slide, to just really get a sense of how can we support and really preserve sort of what the work that we, you know, while doing in the community to preserve homeownership. What does that look like now that the scenario has changed a lot? And so it's really just a moment of reality check. And you know, some folks are sort of moving like things are business as normal, but it's not. And we're all impacted somehow or another. And so stop and check in as humans in this sense. So checking in, how's this impacting? We want to hear from how we can support and the efforts that you all are doing. And then most importantly, what sort of resources are out there that we all have to offer that we can share to help practitioners on the ground, families in the communities, also your work. And then because since this has happened, so much resources have been just going out there, and it takes time to filter through to see what would be most beneficial to the mission of the coalition. So we wanted to spend some time doing that, but also hearing questions. And there are folks on this call who provide a lot of resources and insight that can also help answer the questions. So we want to definitely spend some time doing that. So again, thank you for joining. Thank you for being a part of this. So this is sort of what our objective is for our time together on this call. So the next thing I wanted to point out on our next slide is just reminders. You all are going to be pros by the end of this month of April in terms of you know, using virtual platforms, using Zoom, using Skype, and you know, I'm even learning new platforms myself because other entities are using them. Just a reminder in terms of courtesy and navigating this platform, and that we ask that, you know, if you haven't already, just sort of mute your phone line, and if you're on virtually, to also mute that, so that we're able to hear, from folks. And also, if you know that you have background noise, that's also helpful to just sort of mute. We noticed that a lot of folks are calling in, which is great. And then there's a good number of us also that are using the platform. And so the nice thing about the platform is that we're able to at least get a sense of who's on the call, and because the name will show up. And so I don't know if there are groups in here that also are like in one room sharing a virtual platform, but it would be great in the chat box, just so we're comfortable with the chat box. On the bottom part of the platform, you will see the participants. There's like 27 of us here, and there's also there's a function of the chat box. So if those of you that have access to the chat box, if you can just put your name and the organization, that would be great. And as we're doing that, if we can call a couple of folks that are on the phone, I think a couple of folks started to do that earlier. Leslie was trying to do the guessing game to see who's on the phone. But if you can quickly just name an organization if you're on the phone, just to give us a sense. Thank you, Heidi, for modeling that. So Heidi, so if we can, I'll just even just call numbers. If you can unmute yourself and just tell us who's on the line, just so we have that and we can follow up when need be with emails and information. So
Vicki, I actually muted people as they came in because there were so many people on the line. So we may not be able to do that. When we get to the Q&A, I'll unmute everybody, but I think we might just need to stick with the chat box at this point.
Okay, we'll do that. Just sort of want to just honor that everybody's here. So, and let's just, so the other thing, if you can, let me switch my screen here. Okay, so there's a chat box. Those of you who are using it, thank you so much for doing that. And then the other thing is raise your hand. There should be a function at the bottom where it says reactions, and you can give a thumbs up. Just also, if you have the camera version, raise your hand, because sometimes when folks get in the zone of talking, you want to interject and add something to it, or have a comment about it, or even have a question. You can also just virtually wave, and Joanna and also Leslie are both on this platform, so we're all helping each other behind the scenes and just being aware of trying to get everyone's responses and comments. And then just phone users, we'll do our best to read what we have on the slides. We'll definitely share certain information on the slides. And also, when the time comes to hear from you all, we definitely want to hear from you on the phone, and Joanna will unmute so we're able to hear from folks. So those are just sort of courtesies and how we want to show up in this virtual platform for this next couple of minutes together. So anything that you want to add, Joanna?
No, I think you got it covered, and I will, I moved on to the next slide, but I guess I do want to, I'm sorry that I muted everybody, but I don't know how to, well, okay, we'll just keep going, and then we'll unmute all once we get to the discussion portion.
Joanna, I think it is possible if you press your space bar, if you are muted, you are audible just while you're pressing the space bar. Would that
Great.
help?
Yeah, so anyone on the call that wants to unmute themselves, if you're on the computer, it's easy to do, but it's the folks on the phone that,
okay.
So
that was sort of the Zoom logistics, and we'll figure it out. Like I said, by the end of this month, all of us will be on so many virtual platforms that we'll probably be giving each other TA on it. So what we're going to use our time together is we want to do a quick sort of participant poll, and then dovetail that with an open discussion with folks on the call, and really to get a sense and a pulse of like what's happening, what's going on. And so we're going to do that next. And then after that, after we sort of kind of hear from folks, we're going to go into Q&A, and the Q&A is really for you to ask questions like, we're worried about, not getting payments, or clients not paying for that, or how do we handle that? What are sort of resources that can help families on the ground or our organization? So that's an opportunity for you to ask these sort of questions. And we have folks on the call now who can answer that, or we can find the right resources to figure that out. So that part is really an opportunity for you all to ask the questions and for us to have a dialogue. And then the last part of our time together will be focused on sort of resources, what COVID resources are out there that we think is relevant to the work that we're all doing in terms of home ownership. So that's the kind of focus of our time together.
okay. I've got too many windows open. All right, so we're going to go ahead and we are going to go ahead and do the poll. Vicki, you ready for me to launch the poll? Okay, so here we go. And for those that are on the phone and can't see the poll, I'll just let you know what the questions are, so you can have a sense for what the information we're trying to get. So what we're looking for is, do you have any positive COVID-19 cases in your community? And it's just yes or no question. And are you seeing, the second question is, are you seeing any evidence of loss of income or inability to pay from your borrowers or clients yet? So you can just check on, there's three choices there. The answers are absolutely, no, not yet, or no, so far so good. Sorry, let me repeat that. The answers are you seeing any evidence of loss of income or inability to pay from your borrowers or clients yet? Absolutely, yes, was the first choice. The second choice is not yet, but we anticipate layoffs in our community soon. And then the third choice is no, so far so good. And then finally, the last question is number 3, how has COVID-19 impacted your efforts to promote homeownership? The first answer is not at all. The second answer is waiting for the uncertainty to die down, but will continue efforts soon. And the third answer is everything is on hold indefinitely. So we'll just give folks a couple more minutes to respond, and hopefully everyone that's on the phone is able to see the questions. And then I'll show the results of the poll, and then we can also have a little feedback from the folks on the phone. Okay. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see the results here. On our first question, it looks like 70% have said that there are COVID-19 cases in your community, and so about 2/3 say yes and 1/3 say no. Are you seeing any evidence of loss of income? Almost half of you who responded on the webinar said yes, absolutely. 23% said no, not yet, but we anticipate it coming soon, and about 1/3 of you guys said that you're so far so good. And then just in terms of how the virus has impacted your efforts to promote homeownership, the biggest response, and I guess this isn't a surprise, 69% said you're waiting for the uncertainty to die down, but will continue your efforts soon. One respondent said everything's on hold indefinitely, and then 23% of you guys said no, not at all. So what I'd like to do just really quickly is just to I'm just going to unmute everybody, and let's hold on, because sometimes when you unmute everybody, it gets really staticky. So if you're on the phone, if you're on the webinar, if you're on Zoom, if you wouldn't mind muting yourself, because sometimes we get feedback. But I want to give the folks on the phone the opportunity to say, how do you want to contribute to these results? Is that consistent with what you see? So everyone should be unmuted. Does anyone want to provide their thoughts?
Yeah, this is Roger at the HUD office. Obviously in Sioux Falls, we've had plenty of cases, and there's a lot of folks who have been directly impacted here in Sioux Falls, as is on the conversation with Rapid City, and the same thing over there as well.
Great. And Roger, what are you hearing about the home ownership stuff? Like, I mean, just in terms of people's ability to pay, are you starting to see impact on borrowers?
That was part of a conversation on another call today. Yes, and part of the conversation went to, there's some forbearance things out there, and some of the concerns certainly are, okay, hey, you don't have to pay your loan for 3 months, but guess what? At the end of 3 months, you owe 3 months or 4 months worth of payments, or we're going to make you repay in 2 months or whatever like that. So some of the fear is 3, 6, 9 months down the road, they may keep their homes now, but 6 months down the road, all of a sudden they have to pay a lot extra and they can't afford it, and so they're concerned about that. So they're looking into, through some of the funding mechanisms, the ability to pay for mortgage payments initially to help maybe curb some of that down the road.
Okay, great. Thank you, Roger. And if there's one message that I would hope that everyone takes away here, for those of you that are working with home buyers, is that forbearance does not have to be a situation where at the end of the forbearance period, there's a balloon payment. That it's really up to us to counsel our borrowers about loss mitigation, taking advantage of every loss mitigation opportunity that's available for that particular lender. And it'll vary by lender. But that's a very important message to get across. And thanks for raising that, Roger. Anyone else have feedback on the poll generally about what's happening in your community? And we're going to talk about that more, but just to close out the discussion on the initial questions in our poll, any what's going on in your community and the impact that you're starting to see now with your clients and your work?
Just show the next slide because I think it's a natural transition to that.
Okay, I'll turn it back to Vicki then.
So thank you for sharing the poll results. I think that's quite interesting and also not surprising. And Roger, thank you for sort of teeing up this nice bridge to this conversation. We would love to hear from folks in different places in the state there. How is your community responding to this pandemic? What is your biggest concern today at homeownership in your community as you all go forward? And then what sort of resources do you need? We really want this to be more of an open dialogue. And so to respond to any one questions or all, whatever that you feel that your peers here should know about how you all are reacting. So thank you for that sort of example, Roger. So we'd love to hear from others as well.
So since nobody's speaking, I'll talk. Hi, this is Anna from Black Hills Community Loan Fund in Rapid City. And as far as the number of cases that are in Rapid City, it's relatively low, thankfully for now. And just with our CDFI and what we've seen is we haven't really heard a lot from our clients so far, primarily because the majority of them are on salary. And if, so we don't know if they're essential or non-essential employees. However, they are getting paid even if they are at home. And so it hasn't been a huge impact on our organization as a CDFI and as the payments that are coming in. What I've also observed within the city is that evictions are occurring, and that in itself is disturbing, given that the families that are being evicted, they are not working, and we're not prepared to be evicted, and to be able to have the funds to support moving, on top of everything else that's going on with COVID, is quite stressful on those families. And it's rumored, I haven't seen the evidence of it yet, but it's rumored that the landlords are actually having families move out, evicting them, and then turning around and advertising the homes as rentable, but increasing the rents. So I've been, writing some letters to the city council for assistance, but I'm one organization. I'm not, a lot to, I can't represent an entire population. However, there are discussions going on in town with a housing coalition and other community members to try and address the eviction issues. As an organization, we're working to create some products to help our clients once this is done, because we've seen the utility companies put if they had clients that they were going to shut down their services, they're not doing that right now. However, when this is done, come May or June, those clients that were already in a deficit are going to be in bigger trouble because they're not, still not paying their bills for May and June. And so I'm hoping that we are able to reach out and help some of those with their recovery efforts as well. It's disheartening what I see in town, because there's still quite a bit of traffic. There's still quite a bit of people out and about. When we go shopping for groceries, or when I go shopping for groceries, there's still a considerable amount of people out there. And, I see what's happening in Sioux Falls, and that's concerning for me, as that's where I have my son and my granddaughter that live there, I wish people would just take it seriously, because I worry about our populations, our native populations. We have one case on Pine Ridge now, and I worry about them, and it's quite scary.
Thank you so much, Anna, for letting us know what's happening in Rapid City and some of the concerns that you're seeing and hearing. So thank you for that. Any others that we want to hear from? We got a couple, some time to just check in with folks in different places.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yep, we can hear you,
Hi,
Eric.
everybody. Good to see everybody today. Hope everybody's doing well. I'll start with the top-down questions. How's the community responding to the pandemic? And luckily, we have minimal cases right now. One case did hit one of our tribal members, but 3 out of the 4 people have recovered from so far. The one case that is in our housing, that person is self-isolated right now currently. And we've kind of developed through our EMS department, a color code system. I can share that with everybody over email.
So Eric, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted, for those that are on the phone, can you just let folks know where you're from, which community you're talking about?
Yeah, Eric Shepard, Executive Director, System Option Housing Authority. As I was saying, Joanna, but we have developed a community color-coded system through our EMS at the different stages of the critical, and as we starts to recover from healing. So right now it's in critical stage, but a lot of community has come together to donate supplies to this individual and checking on them frequently, family, friends, the extended family. So the second part to this, the second question, what is our biggest concerns today about homeownership in our community going forward? Again, it's, we're underway on a huge project right now. Our last project that we had, expanding the community, that was all homeownership. That was 20 units through First Tribal Lending. We have a few other USDA loans out there as well in the beginning stages, also some right in the, so we have a few, we have some big concerns right there in the extent of this. I don't know, it's kind of hard to prepare for the unknown and the uncertainty of times right now of how far this is out. The governor had, South Dakota Governor Noem had extended this out to May 31st and see where we stand. I wish the community also would take a stronger stance on this and take it more serious. There are some people that are still out and about and doing things. There's a lot of one program says this, another program says that going on around here, which we should all be unified from top down, all programs separate, or if they're autonomous or not. What resources do we need? Right now it's almost everything from cleaning supplies to the forbearance and how those are going to play out and those products and the vehicles of that. We are very grateful and thankful, though, that we do have some relief coming towards us in the next couple of weeks through the IHBG. There's some other things that are in the pipeline out there and other packages that aren't, I think, really announced yet, but waiting to hear those announcements and those FAQs, so how we can stay in compliance with regulations and that. So that's all I have for now.
Thank you so much, Eric. Do we want to hear from Cheyenne River? Michelle, are you on the line? Do you want to let us know what's going on over there?
I was thinking about it, and what's nice is our lender for bands is the one that's taking care of everything. So I guess, I would ask them that question. But in terms of the only thing that's held up right now are the home buyer readiness classes. So we had set up classes for the general public and then another for the veterans. So we went ahead and postponed those indefinitely. I know there's some families that are working on their loans and they are working with forbearance and seeking down payment assistance with us. I still continue to work with them via email. So that's basically what's happening over here.
Hi, this is April from Forbearance. Everything is kind of rolling, kind of stopping. We're in this middle mode of we're still trying to get borrowers pre-qualified, but we're having a hard time getting things like environmentals and TSRs and just the documents that are needed to go along with the underwriting of mortgages. So they definitely are looking different and slowed down, but we're still trying to assist our home buyers because we don't want anything to stop. Because we know it's hard to get it back going. So we're just trying to keep any avenues we can open and just work with our clients as much as possible.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, April, for that and sharing that. Anyone else? Is there Angela? Is Angela on the line, or anybody from Lakota Funds?
I think Kelsey's on.
Yeah, I was trying to think someone else to talk, Kelsey specifically, but so I'm Tawny Brunch, director at Lakota Funds. And so, yeah, we've got one case on Pine Ridge that was just identified on Tuesday. And man, does that make it real. It's a fear thing, and you have to wonder then, there's a good possibility, maybe I was in contact with that person. You just don't know because we're such small communities and we have to visit the same few stores that we have here and stuff. So, and so as far as kind of our status with that one positive case, I think one of the impacts it's having, strangely enough, is that our tribe has enforced a lockdown. And at first it was just a 72-hour lockdown, and they are actively patrolling the borders and the highways and stopping people, finding them if they don't have the proper documentation to prove that they're working, that they're essential. And a lot of problems with that, but now it sounds like they're lifting that lockdown for one day tomorrow, early, for one day because it's EBT day. It's the 10th. And so that's when a lot of families get their EBT and they're able to buy their groceries that they're going to need for the week or whatever. They're supposed to stick to the local grocery stores, which is ridiculous. There's Wombly Mart, which is a tiny grocery store, and Sioux Nation. Those stores, I will guarantee you, and Kyle Grocery and Kyle, they're going to be completely wiped out, and is not just going to add to the panic. So you've got one day because the lockdown goes into effect for 2 weeks, starting at 10 o'clock tomorrow night. So that's part of the atmosphere here. I feel like, families are dealing with the fear of it, the fear of for their own, health and safety, but then also of this environment, the tribe has kind of created a fear. The good news is Lakota Funds loan clients are not storefront businesses for the most part. A lot of them have secondary sources of employment, of repayment, and so our loan clients are current. The credit union's delinquency, this is crazy, is lower than it's ever been because a lot of our borrowers at the credit union are on fixed incomes or salaried and they're all on paid leave and they're not able to go spend their money anywhere. It's kind of odd that would be the case there. But long term, who knows? I don't know how long everyone can stay on paid leave. My ag producers, 54% of Dakota Fund's portfolio is now ag producers, with an annual payment due, in the fall for the most part. And that market's super volatile right now, so who knows how that will be. But I think the other question, I can't call in, or I can't do a call in and be in Zoom in the same time. Because my internet is not strong enough to support Zoom. So we know that we need broadband here, is another need we've realized. As far as how this is changing home ownership, I think going forward, for one thing, the immediate impact is going to be how it's diverting all the funding sources to COVID. And that's going to be a long-term impact. We're not even that's going to be ongoing. But the other thing is the big need for teaching post-purchase, pre-purchase, like we did at Eagle Nest Housing, for one, and focusing more on foreclosure prevention. I mean, I almost think we're going to have to do things like require maybe 3 months worth of mortgage payments in an account that could be dual controlled. It could be like an escrow account. We need to force these families to be prepared. And that's one thing we know is no one has savings. You know what I mean? You're happy to be approved for a mortgage, and yeah, you can make a payment. It looks like you can barely make a payment, but you can make a payment with approving for home ownership. That's not going to work anymore. We can't set these families up for disaster. So I feel like that's definitely something we're going to have to address, especially as a coalition, in whatever post-purchase curriculum, whatever foreclosure prevention curriculum, which we've been talking about for a while. As we develop that, it has to be. I think that has to be the focus.
Thank you so much, Tani. Those are really some good insights in terms of what you're seeing, but also thinking about the long term and how we need to come out of this differently in the work that's happening on the ground. So thank you. We have enough time to hear from one or two more individuals from another community. Can someone chime in? It's hard to see names on the phone call, so love to hear from a different Native community just to hear what's going on the ground.
I have a question. Michelle, I know, shared a little bit from Cheyenne River about the homeownership piece. We've also heard, Michelle, that you all have been tasked with creating another homeless shelter. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Can you repeat that question, please?
Sure. We've heard that you all from housing have been asked by the tribal chairman to take the lead in putting together a homeless shelter to provide shelter for folks. Could you tell us just a little bit about that?
Yes, Sharon took over the Cheyenne, it's called the Old Agency Homeless Shelter, and I'm not part of that group, but my understanding is that they're going to make a decision tomorrow, because there's different, there's all kinds of ways that they could go in terms of this funding, and a lot of it's, we don't have the information on how to get that money. They didn't pass out the criteria or the FAQs, they call it, and so that's what they're doing right now. They're on the U.S. Treasury call.
Okay.
To find out about that money, and then so there's just different avenues they're considering. They're considering building a new shelter, a 50-person shelter, or else retrofitting the current shelter with showers and bathroom. And then there's a bingo hall across the parking lot if retrofitting that, or because there's no showers in those community centers, so they're trying to figure out. And then it's just not in one solid decision yet. The chairman's got to make a decision, I think, by tomorrow on how Sharon is going to go.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Michelle.
Hey, this is Roger with HUD. Can I chime in on that just a sec?
Please.
Yeah, part of the CARE Act funding is South Dakota got just a little over $2.1 million under the Emergency Solutions Grant Program, and that is predominantly used for shelters. It's historically been used for that, but they are currently accepting applications for that funding now. So if a person or in any community is interested, they should get a hold of South Dakota Housing or visit their website, sdhda.org, and look at that. It's a pretty quick turnaround time. I don't remember exactly when the application is due, but it's due relatively soon because they hope to have that money obligated and start going out the door by the end of this month.
So Vicki, just really quickly to say that we have that information when we talk about resources, we've got that included. But just one point of clarification that tribal governments and TDHEs aren't eligible to apply for it. So it would have to be a nonprofit who applies. We had in our policy committee call this morning, we had a discussion with Lorraine about it, and we were kicking around some ideas, but we've got the link in our materials. And I don't think Vicki mentioned this at the outset, but we are going to send out, this call is being recorded, and we'll send out the recording if you want to share it with folks in your community. But then also we are, we'll send out the resources. I think Heidi's starting on our website a page there as well.
Thank you, Joanna. I'll just add one more thing and then we'll go to sort of Q&A and some resources. This morning, the Home Buyer Readiness Committee had a call. They always meet every second Thursday of the month at 10 a.m. And so they did their check-in and sort of giving updates. And we had Thunder Valley, Lakota Fund, Black Hills, Mazaska, I think it was Pine Ridge. So all of them are basically, they're all working from home, and there's lockdown as well in the community. One thing that I wanted to just share that was from the committee that they were saying is that they're really, those practitioners are really trying to figure out how to do their class, continue to keep things moving with, you know, home buyer community members to prepare. So they're really looking at the virtual platform, like we want to learn how to do this. And Rachel with Happy Homes, Rachel Dix had offered doing some training and webinars with the coalition members because she has really moved everything onto a virtual platform and has invited them to kind of observe her virtual class. So there's that partnership happening in the Home Buyer Readiness Committee, as well as learning that OWISTA, First Nations OWISTA Corporation, is putting their Building Native Community Financial Skills for Family curriculum online. And so Black Hills is working with them on getting that ready. So they are working, practitioners in the committee are really thinking about how do we move you connecting with clients by phone and virtually possible. Knowing that you know, broadband and services are patchy, but you know, they're gonna try and test these various ways to keep education going and staying in contact with families on the ground and with each other. So I just wanted to give that out since that was fresh off from this morning. If there are no other final comments, we want to go to Q&A session right now. And this is an opportunity for you all to really ask some questions about where you all are at in terms of how to address this. Is there a resource for this particular issue? Or even offer maybe some strategies for the thinking about. For example, you know, Tani was talking a little bit about you have to sort of pivot to, you know, looking at emergency fundings for families on the ground. What does that look like? And start to really, ramp that up differently. Or it may be being clear at the last comment that Roger had pointed out about the CARES Act, what sort of resources are out there, and what can we use as an organization or as a coalition as a whole. And Joanna, you feel free to add so that we can hear from folks.
Yeah, one thing I would like to do is acknowledge all of our partners that are on the line today, all the different stakeholders, because we really have a nice balance of people working in the 9 Native communities in South Dakota, as well as some of the service providers from the state, from USDA, from lenders, from MHP, from Fannie Mae. So it's funny because when Vicki, Leslie, and I were preparing for this, Leslie said, well, who's going to answer the questions on the webinar? If someone asks a question, who's going to answer it? And I said, my response was, well, at this point, whoever knows the answer will answer, just because we have so many partners, and that's part of the beauty of the coalition. So if you guys are working on something and you just think about what the biggest challenges that are facing you now, whether it's with immediate needs like cleaning supplies, like Eric mentioned, or how to budget for that, or it's how to transition your home buyer education to a virtual setting, or continuing your loan services, any of those types of things, or counseling a borrower. We have a lot of experts on the call, so just think about what your immediate needs are, and if you have a question about how to address those needs, please throw it out there.
I have a question. This is Leslie. This is a question for Jewel. Jewel, are you, in terms of 184 borrowers, are you seeing folks already having difficulties making payments, and how is that being addressed?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, we've had a fair amount of calls from the field from our borrowers. Obviously, forbearances and modifications are top of the subject matter. There's a lot of confusing information coming out and rumors being started and what have you, anywhere from tribal entities hearing that HUD is telling lenders to do deferments for the next 3 to 9 months on their mortgage payments and things like that. Well, we haven't gotten any direction from HUD or ONAP around that, and the modification and forbearance process has always been out there for those borrowers that have life struggles without a virus issue. So but not everybody will qualify for a modification, I think, and there's specific, I think, qualifying factors on there, and I'm not aware of all of what they are. I know that one of them, I think, is you have to be 60 days past due. Like Joanna said, the forbearance, to me, I mean, it's an option today, but I think people really need to understand, what that means by getting themselves into a forbearance. You're going to forego the next 2 to 4 months, but at the end of that term, those payments are due and payable. So if people are expecting back pay or what have you and can do that, then the forbearance makes sense. But I think a majority of the people, like Tani brought up, planning ahead, that's hard, because I think and I agree with it. I mean, we should, because we should always have a penny for the rainy day deals, right? If a car breaks down, we have emergency or what have you, but that's easier said than done for a lot of our clients. I think if we really, I guess, went after the statistics that are out there, I think we'll find that a large percentage of America doesn't have a lot in savings, for emergency funds. And I think that that's true within a lot of our HUD 184 borrowers. They don't have that penny saved for, a virus issue or, a death in the family or something where they have to skip a payment, or they can pay ahead or what have you. So I don't know how busy our customer service line is, but I know myself and my 3 loan officers here have fielded a fair amount of calls. How those calls are turning out, I can't report on those because we don't get that feedback.
Thanks, Jewel. That's really helpful. So again, we're sort of listening to all this in terms of what programming or what services or what resources could we as a coalition provide. So again, maybe it is sort of an informational webinar on how to negotiate the a more optimal arrangement in terms of when you pay and how much you pay, and again getting a sense of what it would take to qualify for a modification, that kind of, if we could work with you on that sort of thing. So
Yeah,
that's really helpful.
Can I also, Jewel, thank you for sharing that. And I know there's a number of other lenders on the line. There's folks from USDA and also folks from VA. I think Dean's on the line, and they've provided. I know HUD hasn't provided much guidance other than to say that there's a moratorium on eviction and foreclosure for 184, but the folks from USDA or VA or even Kelly from Fannie Mae, does anyone else want to address the same issue the same question that Leslie asked? I guess I'll start with USDA. I know Shannon's on the line, and Shannon and Kevin from the South Dakota office. How are you counseling 502 direct borrowers?
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Kevin. I'm in Sioux Falls, and we've been working at home for 3 weeks now, so we're going a little stir crazy, but we're still up and running. There were several provisions in the CARES Act that affected both our multifamily and single family housing programs. On the direct single family housing loan side, we have borrowers have the opportunity to, first of all, apply for payment assistance if their income's been reduced, or if they need more payment assistance, they can request that as well. Direct borrowers can also request a 180-day moratorium under the CARES Act. And I think that's, from what I understand, fairly self-certifying. So I don't think there's a lot of documentation required there. And I don't think those are not going to be due at the end of 6 months. So if borrowers are experiencing loss or decrease in income, they should contact the Central Servicing Center in St. Louis, and they can help work through them. They're getting a lot of calls on this down there, so they're going to have to be patient. But those are the people that can set up either increased or new payment assistance or the moratorium. And the moratorium is even, I think, is renewable for another 180 days if we get down the road and things haven't improved.
So Kevin, what does payment assistance look like? Does that just mean like an emergency grant to cover one mortgage payment, or is it a bigger subsidy in your?
Payment assistance is a reduction, essentially a reduction in the interest rate on your loan. So we can assist you with the interest rate between what you're paying, what your rate is on your note, which is fixed, and 1%. So, and that's good for, that's a ongoing program. Payment assistance is in our direct program.
And that's based on a reduction in income. So you're basically recalculating your interest based on your income. Okay.
Right. So it's an income based, of course, as well. So if they contact the folks in St. Louis, they can walk them through that. But that's an ongoing thing in our program, so that's not CARES Act related.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah.
And then on the back end, at the end of the forbearance period, you have the folks in St. Louis have the flexibility to negotiate a loan modification. So either the payment gets added to the end of the loan or re-amortize it. Yeah. Okay.
Great. On our multifamily housing programs, from the owner standpoint, I know some people on the call that maybe have rural development housing, multifamily housing loans. We're offering a 3-month forbearance, and they can self-certify that. And so they need to get a hold of whatever loan servicing office that they work with, we can get them the form, and we've committed to having that turned around pretty quickly. I think it's 5 days to get that done, and we can forego the payment for 3 months and forego the reserve deposits. And, so we can do that. Also, in our multifamily housing programs, both in the direct loan program and in the voucher program, the CARES Act prohibits evictions for non-payment until July 25th. So if you have people in your community that are live in rural development projects, they don't need to worry about evictions. But if they have an income loss, they certainly need to contact management. And again, we can increase or put them on rental assistance based on their income, and then recertify them when they go back to work. So again, that would be through their project management company, not the agency, but those are also available by contacting their management company.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I mean, it seems like a theme in all of this, in talking to lenders, is talk to the servicing agent and or management company to negotiate what you can. I think going back to what Leslie said, that we definitely want to provide maybe a webinar or something like that to help you guys, the practitioners, know how to direct their clients. Just really quickly, Dean, are you still on the line? Do you want to say anything about the VA just issued guidance today? I don't know if you've had a chance to kind of know about that.
Yeah, we're pretty much adhering to the CARE Act with the 180 days, plus if you're still having problems, you can ask for another 180 days on it. Modifications that are up to the servicers of our homes, so that makes it a little bit different, but we've put out guidance and circular regarding it, indicating that they should be treated as the modification should be like we do for disasters, for hurricanes and whatnot. So pretty much whatever we can do. We spend a lot of time educating people, which I heard you guys talking about possibly a webinar. I think that's a great idea. People kind of need to understand, you know, what happens if you add 6 months of payments to your loan and re-amortize it. Your payments are going to go up. You may owe more than what you actually originally purchased the property for. There's a lot of things that, a lot of decisions that need to be made by the borrowers, and we spend a lot of time talking with them about that. I'm all for a webinar and would be willing to help out if needed.
Great, thanks, Dean. And any other lenders on the line want to address that? Either Kelly from Fannie Mae or Jewel, I think I cut you off earlier. Sorry about that. Did you want to add anything else?
This is Kelly. I'll just add, if Jewel didn't have anything else to say. You know, I think what Fannie Mae is doing is a lot what everybody else has kind of said. You know, we are suspending foreclosures and evictions for the next 60 days. Our forbearance plans are going up to 12 months, and we will not negatively report on the credit bureaus, and we're not charging or incurring any late fees. We're not really thinking about loan modifications today, just because the market is so fluid. So we really just want to make sure that everybody is getting into these forbearance plans. And on the other side of the coin, you know, because interest rates are really at an all-time low, we still have the largest purchase market that we have ever seen. So it is this odd dynamic of trying to balance loan originations and trying to maintain the servicing. And it's just really ironic, because the foreclosure crisis that we experienced back in 2008, there's some relative kind of commonalities, but this one is just so different. So we're really trying to retrain our servicers. We're dusting off some of our old policies and procedures, and we're still trying to keep the mortgage market going on the pre-purchase side by relaxing some appraisal standards, and still trying to keep both sides of the house kind of up and running, if you will. So from my perspective, that's what I can add.
Thanks, Kelly.
Kelly, this is Connie. Can I just spend quick and ask Jewel and Kelly, whoever else lending, is there an option? I know you guys are offering forbearance. Would the borrower have an option to request an extension? And so instead of forbearance for those payments are going to be due when that's up, an extension is what the credit union's done in the past, where you basically can do, you know, if it's 30, 60, I don't know how many days you want to go out, 60 days is probably what's going to be needed. To roll those payments, basically tag them onto the back of the loan.
That's a modification.
Can they request that? Can they request it?
Yeah.
Oh.
But not everybody will qualify. Like I said, Tony, and I don't know the parameters around it exactly, but I think one of the initial ones is, from what I'm hearing, is that you have to be 60 days past due.
Before you can request modification?
Right.
Mm.
Yep.
And, you know, and while we will offer the modifications, we're really just holding off on that because we don't know if this is going to extend 2 months, 5 months, 9 months. And if we rewrite the loan, you know, there's only so many times that you can do that as well. So we really want to be able to use that tool when we think that there's kind of light at the end of the tunnel. And it's just really hard to say right now, trying to project. So again, the best option is that forbearance up to 12 months right now.
I need to step away for just a second. Sorry.
Okay, thanks, Jill. Hopefully Jill will be back. Thank you, Kelly, for sharing that, because it does, I think, underscore the value that CDFIs can have, and maybe emergency loans or smaller loans to help people stay current on their mortgages so they don't get upside down where they owe more than the home is worth.
That's right.
So that's helpful. And I think it also helps us to have a better sense of how to support the homeownership movement in South Dakota as a coalition.
Yeah.
Okay. And Tani, I think, you know, hearing what's going on with your borrowers and the credit union is also helpful. I want to be respectful of folks' time because we're running out of time here, and I just wanted to quickly go through the last we have 2 slides of resources. Again, this will be emailed out to you all. I want to also thank everyone who was on the line. Mark Lossing from the South Dakota Housing Development Authority was on the line as well, but he had to get off to go to another call. And they've been great partners working with us in trying to identify resources. So on this slide, you'll see that the South Dakota Governor's Office has a page dedicated to COVID issues, and the state also has a relief program for workers. They also, which is a little bit more stringent than the federal program, which is a lot more stringent than the federal program, but might be another source for some of your borrowers, some of your clients. And this website has it's a good place for all the federal resources as well with regard to businesses. The South Dakota, here's, as we talked about the next one earlier when Roger brought up the Emergency Solutions Grant. Here are the dates. It's due on April 17th, and those funds will be awarded on the 24th, and those are for nonprofits and local governments, but not tribes. There's a federal statutory restriction because of NAHASDA. But that's definitely a program that nonprofits can use for some emergency relief with regard to homelessness and people who are at a threat for being homeless because they lost their job or they're having problems paying rent or their mortgage. The next one is a link to the fabulous stakeholder announcement that was released yesterday by USDA, and all in one place, all the different resources and forbearances and things. Thank you, Ted, for sharing that with us. And I also there's a lot on there, but one thing I'll mention is that there is additional funding now through USDA under their broadband program. So usda.gov/reconnect. Tani, check that out. You should look at that so that we can see your lovely face on the Zoom calls and expand your broadband capability.
We're on it.
And then of course, we talked about some of the lender guidance already. We have a link to the HUD guidance. We have a link to the DA guidance that just came out today. And then the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, CFPB, they are also forward thinking about protecting finances, specifically mortgages. So you'll get a link to their page that you can use with your client. And then some philanthropy. Indian Collective just launched today a COVID-19 response project, and they've got grants for, I think they've raised, I don't know how many millions of dollars around this, but they just got 500,000 yesterday from Bush. And they've got grants for small businesses, individuals, nonprofits, under 500 employees, over 500 employees, and including tribes. So, and their grants range from like 15,000 for small businesses under 500, and then 15 to 100,000, I think. So they have different size programs. And then the Bush Foundation has a great resource list that we'll send you a link to as well. So that's I mean, as you guys know, this is all very fluid. Even in the time, like the 20 minutes before this, I added 2 things to this resource list. So as soon as we have information, Heidi, as I said, is putting together a resource page on the coalition's website. We'll just try and keep it current. We also know that you're inundated with lots of information from other folks, so we'll try and keep it really focused on your homeownership, your housing counseling, and issues regarding you know, what the challenges that you're facing in your community.
So thank you so much, Joanna. I know that we're at time, a little over, but we really curious to know from folks, what's this call help to have these calls maybe once a month or bi-weekly or in your meetings only. We again want to honor your time, but also want to know if this was helpful and if you guys would like to have this as an ongoing thing going forward, just to stay connected and just, you know, go with what is happening out there. So use your chat box or chime in by your phone, letting us know if this is helpful. You can also just send us an email letting us know. That way we can figure out how often you all want to do this, if it is helpful.
Or what would be more helpful is another question. I do have one question. Anna asked if she texted me, do we need to be certified HUD housing counselor to apply? And I wasn't sure which program were you talking about?
The emergency services funds.
No, you just have to be a nonprofit, and you have you have to have the capacity to work with rehousing people. You guys might actually be a good candidate for that. And Roger, if there's a movement, if there's like a Rapid City wide initiative that Anna could plug into, that would be awesome. But I don't know if Anna, do you know Roger?
No.
So I'll connect.
Yeah, on a conversation I had on an earlier call today, I think the County Human Services there in Rapid City it sounds like they probably will be applying to do some community stuff. So if you're connected with anything through Rapid City, Barry Tice, I think is his name, you might want to touch base with them in Rapid City to see if there's a way that you can tap into some of that.
So Roger, Roger, I'm gonna, if it's okay with you, I'm gonna connect you by email with Anna.
Absolutely.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you
for joining. People are signing off, and let us know by email if you need anything, and just be safe, healthy, be well. So thank you all for joining us, and the rest of the afternoon.
Thanks,
everyone.